Rock stars, songwriters, the sidemen and women, music producers, and more join Dayna Steele each week to talk about the rock business. Slide into the booth and join the conversation. This is Dayna's Diner on Houston Radio Platinum.
One of my favorite things about doing Dayna's Diner is I can use it as an excuse to find old friends, talk to old friends, catch up with old friends. Today is no exception. Musician, songwriter, voiceover artist, just all around good guy, Dan Navarro. Welcome to Dayna's Diner.
Thank you for having me. I'll have the pastrami on marble rye, please. This is a diner, right?
Yeah, with or without mustard.
Never without, always with. I'm not a mayonnaise guy. All right. Somebody told me a really awful, not dirty, but disgusting joke when I was a kid where mayonnaise was the punchline. And I can't do it. It's just a reality. I can take it in things. In chicken salad, in tuna salad, in egg salad, not on.
Not on. Well, one of these days, when I eventually find something that actually pays me, like, maybe one day Dayna's Diner will actually make money. We'll move it into a diner. We'll do it live. But until then, you're in your living room. I'm in the rock and roll guest room, and I'm just going to jump in. First of all, I'm just going to get the family thing out of the way. I am not related to the real Allison Steele, the Nightbird of New York City. You are related to Dave Navarro, first cousins?
I am. He's my cousin.
Yeah, from Jane's Addiction and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Did you guys ever write together, work together, do anything?
He was a lot younger than I am, still is. I was in my 20s when he was 10. I was in my mid-20s. I taught him his first 3 guitar chords because I lived with his dad for 2 years in the 1970s. When Dave's mom and dad split up, was corresponded with when I split up with somebody, and I needed a place to live for a week or two, and it turned into 2 years. Dave had the typical divorced parent schedule of every Wednesday and every other weekend. So we hung out, and he said, "Would you show me some guitar chords?" I showed him 3 chords. I showed him G, C, and D, and that was it. And then he went on and learned it all and got incredibly good. We do different styles of music, and we favor a relationship over music. He played on my first 2 albums in 1990 and 1993. Then he got really, really busy. I mean, he was busy anyway. Jane's Addiction came out in 88 when I was writing with the Bangles. And so we would kind of make jokes like, hey, we're going to end up on the same charts someday. And it has happened. Same charts, same radio stations. And it's pretty cool.
That's fun. Do you still see each other? I mean, at family gatherings, that sort of thing.
I haven't seen him in about 4 years.
Wow.
We've communicated by text and had during COVID we had a lot of COVID live videos to one another, and we were going to get together. It was right around the David Bowie birthday, death day in 2021, and we started talking Bowie, and we were going to get together to do a version live for video of Quicksand, which is one of, a not as well-known song of Bowie's. And he even commented, he goes, "This is the first time you and I have ever talked about music other than I like Hendrix, I like Zeppelin." We really got into the weeds on it, and we learned the parts, and I went out to go drive, and because it was COVID and I hadn't started my car for a month, it was dead, and I missed my window.
Oh, wow. But that's fun. That's fun to hear the backstory on that. Now, you, of course, just a prolific songwriter. One of the most biggest songs that people might be familiar with is Pat Benatar, "We Belong."
We Belong.
Backstory on that song?
Backstory on that was actually pretty interesting. I had been in a band with my co-writer, Eric Lowen, for about 3 years. We were side guys in a band that had the misfortune of every time a new act came out, they sounded just like us and they were bigger. I mean, we were not trying to sound like Men at Work, but it was coincidental, and it was like, okay, well, that's done now. And it was, whether it was Men at Work or In Excess or Huey Lewis or whatever it was, all of these late 70s bands, early 80s bands, we couldn't really get any traction. And the band was taking up a lot of time, and I was dealing with working for my Uncle Mike, Dave's dad, and we were also dealing with the loss of Dave's mom in a heinous murder. So I was holding the family and the company together. and the band says, we need more of a commitment from you. Well, I couldn't do it. So I had to quit the band, and I was over 30, and I figured that's it. It's done. Music is over. You're over 30. You know, when you get fired from a band, it's bad. When you get fired from a not very good band, it's worse. So I resigned myself to never doing music again. And Eric Lowen called up after 2 months of us stopping speaking and said, hey, man, you want to write a song? And I was mad and didn't want to do it and was, you know, you say you did this and you betrayed, blah, 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 right? But I didn't say any of it because I also knew I was not doing music and dying on the vine. So I said, sure, let's write a song for no reason. And in 90 minutes on September 22nd, 1983, we wrote We Belong. We loved it. We didn't think anything would happen with it, but he got proactive and started taking it to publishers. And one of them bit and sent it to Benatar, and she picked it. And 1 year after we wrote it, at what was then 32 and 33 years old, we're suddenly pro hit songwriters. So we dove head first. I quit my job with Uncle Mike's company and dove into the pro songwriting world, always wanting to be artists. But yeah, that came from out of nowhere. In fact, what I say this in my encore. If I had said no, an entire lifetime of events, good fortune, friends, and experiences would never have happened if I had said no. And so I'm grateful for that. I mean, that's part of it. And I was convinced that no one would ever hear the song. No one's ever going to hear this. It's been played on U.S. radio 7 million times. Wow. Now, when I'll say this one, when I say a whole lifetime of people and friends would never happen, you would have, because I got to know you through my ex-roommate from the old band I quit, who you knew from his time playing with Eddie Money.
Right.
And that your name came up and we got to know each other distantly. And I still remember and still have a copy somewhere of Steve Perry's Greatest Woe-Woes.
That I put together. I was going to ask you, you've got to find that for me.
I'm going to find it. I have it somewhere. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I spliced together all of the woes from every Journey song I could find.
Whoa, 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 and it's one right after the other.
You got to find that for me. Yeah, it was great. It was a couple of years ago. Was it Thanksgiving? Spike Edney and his wife Kyle, Spike's been on Dayna's Diner, said, hey, we're going up to Idlewild.
That was a year ago. That was just under, that was Memorial Day last year. I guess it was just under a year.
Yeah, right before we left for our 1 year adventure. But they're like, hey, we're going to a friend's house, Dan. We've asked if it's okay if, you and Charlie come. Why don't you come on up? I'm like, great. So we get there and, they're late and, it's like, okay, this guy doesn't know me from Adam, but we're just gonna go on up, and we walk up and you greet us at the top of the stairs. And I'm like, hi, Dan, I'm Dayna. This is Charlie. We're friends of Kyle and Spike. And you just look at me with the biggest grin and you go, you don't remember, do you? And the first thing out of my mouth was, oh my God, did I sleep with you? And Charlie's like, here we go again. Charlie's so used to that now.
I think it was
Charlie's like,
else,
I'm gonna go get a drink. And
yep.
You're like, it's Dan Navarro. And
well,
I was like, oh my God.
I got
so
one
by
of
the
those
time
memories.
Spike and Kyle get there, they're totally confused on you and I acting like we're brother and sister and have known each other for 50 years.
We had met what is now 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's crazy. And of course, my first question, Dayna Steele with a Y? Houston? KLOL? I know her. And, of course, apparently I didn't party down too much in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that I can remember stuff. But it's really, really cool. And I think what's especially cool now is the new list of cross paths we have. And
it's vast.
Right. It is. And it's vast and it's deep and it's cool. And I guess the fun part for me is we just took a little hiatus sitting in adjacent rooms and not really crossing paths. But it's really, really cool.
And now we're when I'm in residence, when you're in residence, we're neighbors in the desert. Now I want to go back to Lowen and Navarro.
Yes.
Very successful songwriting team. David Lee Roth, Pat Benatar, whatever. But you lost Eric to Lou Gehrig's disease in, I think, 2012.
Yeah, he was diagnosed in 2004, 20 years ago last month. And I knew about ALS. He was starting to fall for no reason, and he kind of suspected. He went through a website, the National Institute of the NINDS, Neurological Disorders and Stroke website, and there's a list of diseases, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis starts with an A. So he found it. He went, "Oh, that's it." I went, "Dude, no, find something else. You don't want that.
Go find another disease.
Go
You don't
find
want
another
that.
disease." Well, he did, and it's called Charcot-Marie-Tooth syndrome. That is as paralytic as ALS, but not fatal. And so he was hoping against hope. Bottom line is that we knew something was up, and we thought if we were lucky, he would have 18 months. And he lived 8 years. We got 4.5 years on the road, the last 3 of them with him in a powered wheelchair, saying to audiences, "Hey, it's not weird. We're just a couple dudes on stage here, a cripple and a man in a wheelchair." And that was his line, and I loved it because we kind of made light of this affliction and made everybody else feel comfortable, and he got to do everything he wanted to do.
Well, you came to see my play. Thank you so much. I make light of Alzheimer's. If you don't laugh, you'll cry. So same thing with ALS and with losing Eric, I guess, for you. You got to laugh.
Well, you have to. And I actually have an Alzheimer's joke that my Uncle Mike told me, Dave's dad, which is guy goes to a doctor, says, "I've got good news and bad news." He goes, What's the bad news?" He goes, "Well, the bad news is you have Alzheimer's." He says, "What's the good news?" He goes, "You'll forget by the time you hit the door." It's
Yes,
bad.
everybody bad. Everybody had one of those for me.
Everybody.
Afterward.
Well, the thing is, you laugh at affliction, but you also attend to it soberly, and that is the balance. You can allow yourself to laugh because you show up, and it's something that you do. And I learned from my mom. I learned from Eric, and I've had other experiences with this. I've become go-to on ALS. I've had over 25 friends with it.
Wow.
And the ones who lived the longest were the ones who embraced life and laughed it off. And the ones who got angry and bitter and negative didn't last a year.
Humor. I've heard more
humor.
people with, cancer, you name it. Doesn't cure it, but the quality of life is better and sometimes longer if you can bring laughter and friends and socialization into these things. Back to songwriting.
Yo.
Is there anyone on your wish list? You've written for so many people, and you continue to write and perform. Who's on your wish list? If you could work with anybody, any musician, work with them or write for them, who would it be? Who's on your wish list?
My problem is the people I'd love to write with are also writers, and they don't collaborate. I mean, would I love to be a fly on a wall doing a writing session with Bob Dylan? Absolutely. My dream cut never happened. The one that I really wanted was Ray Charles, and he's gone. I have friends who had Ray Charles cuts, and I just go, "Dude, you had a Ray Charles cut." I mean, that's as good as it gets.
Well, you could hire Bob Dylan to make a wrought iron gate for your place up in Idlewild, and then because that's what he does now on the side.
I didn't know that.
He's an artist. He welds the most amazing wrought iron gates. So you could hire him.
Well, see, that's on the list now. That's something I would want to do. Now, the people that I would love to write with. I mean, I would love to write with Jason Isbell.
I love him. David Crosby loved Jason.
Yeah, and Jason and I have never met. He did post something on Instagram once reminiscing about how he and Mike Mills from REM got bombed and were singing "We Belong" in karaoke, and I wrote him a note, and the note back was, "Good song." That was it. So I figured, okay. Oh well. And I mean, I'm one of these guys who enjoys who does come to the party and not who doesn't. It's just kind of how it is. I would have loved a cut by the band after, and I had a couple of songs that I thought were perfect for them. It didn't happen. I think my dream cut to this day would be Emmylou Harris, simply because she still got it. She sounds fabulous. I would love a Bonnie Raitt cut. As to whether they're going to happen or not, it's really more like who would I like to write with, for me. And I keep thinking of one guy that I keep then revising it, going, you don't really want to do that. And that's Ryan Adams. Although I hear he's not easy. I played trumpet on Stranger's Almanac, the Whiskeytown album, because Jim Scott, who had produced Lowen and Navarro, produced that album, and I was part of a little brass group that played on one song on my record, and so I went and played on Everything I Do on that album. He wasn't in the studio. I've not heard great things. So, yeah, it would be a dream to get to write with him, but I prefer nicer people. Buddy Miller. I'd love to write with John Hyatt. That would be a dream come true to write with Hyatt.
Well, that's good. Now you are still out performing. What's happening now? What's happening next?
I have been busier than I know how to be. Every year I say, well, this is an unusually busy year, and every subsequent year I end up doing the same gigs and add to them. I was on the road 190 days last year. Now that includes producing Jesse Lynn Madera's new album, which started out as like I was going to do 2 tracks, and that was it, end of story, and it turned into the whole album, done with Jim Scott. It's just out now. And I wound up in the Screen Actors Guild negotiations with TV Theatrical that led to the strike.
You testified in front of Congress, didn't you?
I testified in front of Congress on AI in May. So I keep it pretty busy. I've looked at the schedule. The first 5 months of 2024, I will be gone 75% of the time. It slows down later in the year. So I leave April 19th for 6 weeks out. And then I'm home most of June, July, and August. And I'm going to probably go up to the mountains. I'll probably have you guys up there.
And we will come because it's 120 here.
It's going to be, it's already 95 here, and it's still April. What the heck is going on? Oh, right. It's the desert. And, of course, I know Alicia's going to corner Charlie, too, because she's reading his book. And so Alicia is my very significant other.
And Charlie is mine, the Wonder Husband, who wrote the award-winning sci-fi novel, Specific Impulse.
Well, and she's reading that.
And when she's finished, she can join the masses of people bothering him for the sequel. So
must do. And I want to spend this year, my goals, I want to start and finish a Spanish language record. I've sung in Spanish since, I grew up speaking English and Spanish, mostly English. I've been singing in Spanish since 1988, and some years more than others, and have actually sung backups on some major hit albums in Spanish as just a hired gun. Sometimes people look and they go, well, they can't be the same guy. And I'll tell you an anecdote. I sang in the movie Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. Sang backups on the main theme and co-wrote some of the lyrics, and then sang the Doors song, The End, half in English, half in Spanish, with an accent. I'm watching the movie, and a credit rolls by, flamenco guitar, Dan Navarro. And I know they didn't get it wrong. I didn't play flamenco guitar. I didn't play any guitar. I didn't play anything on the record. I only sang, which means there's another dude out there named Dan Navarro working as a flamenco guitarist. It's like, what on earth is that about? So I've done this, but I've never.
You need to find him, and you two can collaborate and just really confuse people.
It really, really well. All right, so the last Lowen and Navarro record had a cellist on it that we worked with for years named Richard Dodd. He's English-born, American-raised, and part of the section quartet with Eric Gorfain. Played on Smashing Pumpkins and Christina Aguilera and lots of records. Well, the mastering engineer is a different guy, also from England, who lives in Nashville, named Richard Dodd. And they're both credited on the record for mastering and cello, but they're different people. Well, it kind of wasn't easy to figure out how to credit that.
Okay, so you got to bring both Dan Navarro's in, both Richard Dodd's. I'm seeing a weird, bizarre concept.
Well, and here's the crazy thing. If you ever went to a Navarro family gathering, there were 3 Dan Navarros, 2 Mike Navarros, 2 Gabriel Navarros. It's like, we've got a lot of creativity, but no imagination when it comes to names.
When it comes to names.
My cousin Dave was named after my late brother, David Navarro. So it happens.
Well, before I wrap this up, the way I want to wrap it up is, I think you've already given some great advice, and it's in parallel with a lot of the advice I give, which is, defer to yes when you can, because you never know what adventure is coming up. But what sort of motto, what do you live your life by? and that you would like to pass on to anyone listening to this, whether it's a songwriter, a voiceover artist, or anybody who's just trying to think, gosh, I'm older now, I can't do anything, but you can.
You can do anything you want. Yeah, yes is the only answer is the motto that I do live by. So you've already said that. It's just true. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you may as well just go for it. At the end of the day, the only failure is quitting. And when young artists come to me and say, I need some advice, I go, quit. I go, well, I can't quit. I went, then you don't need advice. You need luck. And that's done by repetition. The motto that I live by is dare to fail. So I want at-bats. I want to swing away. I want to try brand new stuff. And every year has brought something new. I started doing dubbing of foreign language television series and movies into English about 18 months ago. I had never done that work before. I'm still doing animation voices. I've got a job on Monday. And the whole idea is just, defer to yes, because how bad can it be? And if you sit there and go, nah, I didn't want to do that, well, how do you know what it really would have been like? Every major thing that happened to me happened because I decided I would say yes to something challenging. My vocal work, somebody called me and said, do you want to come sing a jingle for $100 in my garage 35 miles each way? And I went, sure. And I met somebody who opened up my whole vocal career that's led to, 3 Oscar-winning movies and blah, 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 blah. The songwriting, telling Eric no, I'd be working at a Starbucks right now. So you just say yes. Just, afterwards go, yeah, that wasn't good. I don't think I want to do that again. But you don't have the perspective until you say yes.
You've been listening to Dayna's Diner, a weekly conversation with the men and women who created your favorite classic hits. Dayna's Diner is produced by Dayna Steele and Houston Radio Platinum.